We go now to Anton Fedyashin for insight into the election. He's a professor of history at American University here in Washington. Thanks for coming on the program this evening. Can you talk firstly about this move by Macron to dissolve Parliament and hold a snap election? That's right in the middle of the Paris Olympics, I believe. Is this a power play by Macron, do you think?
It's a power play, but it's a power play from a position of weakness, and it's probably a good idea that Macron is doing this now, because I think that his gut is telling him that things will only get more difficult for him and his party going into the summer and then into the fall of this year. So it's a very risky decision, but I think that he calculated that he may as well take the risk now because the stakes will be even worse later.
And of course, this is off the back of a overwhelming response to Le Pen's party, a shift to the far right. We're now seeing 1/3 of European countries have a hard right element in the EU. Will that be a concern for the Commission overall, do you think?
It will, Sally, because ultimately what the EU elections are about is governance. This is essentially a referendum on governance. Now, the way the EU is structured and the way that it runs, the Parliament is sort of more of a rubber stamping institution than something that actually governs. For example, it can't initiate legislation, only approve or disapprove it. That is a form of power, but not the kind of power that, for example, here in the United States, we are used to Congress having. It does send a signal, however, that a sizable majority of the European population is unhappy with the way things are going, especially about the economic situation in Europe. And that is a signal that I hope the EU hears.
What is your read of this shift to the right? How have far-right groups been normalised in the last 5 years? And how are they becoming more mainstream?
I think the answer is actually fairly simple. Questions of immigration, something that is playing an important part in the presidential election here in the United States. So this is by no means something out of left field. And the second issue, of course, is economic performance. Ultimately, people judge their politicians by how well they themselves live. And what we've seen since the war in Ukraine began in February of 2022, and the EU rushed forward with massive amounts of sanctions against the Russians, and especially, most importantly, for the European populations, is the severing of business ties and the severing of energy links, which were the basis of a healthy and strong EU economy. This has created a massive economic crisis for the EU, something that no one thought about, no one predicted at the time. Last year, the Russian economy was the fastest growing in Europe. It may outperform European economies again this year. And things are becoming increasingly difficult in Europe. Many politicians are speaking in terms of deindustrialization. You can't hide this. You can't spin this into some kind of narrative about victory when it comes to ordinary men and women in Europe.
What does this mean for green policies? I mean, scientists tell us that this is a really decisive decade. Is there a danger that these policies will be slowed because of the electorate?
There's absolutely that danger. And again, we here come to the irony of the centrality of the Ukrainian conflict. Remember that when the Green Movement began to seriously plan for a transition away from hydrocarbons, Russian gas was supposed to be that bridge energy source that was going to put coal and, in certain places, such as Germany, of course, nuclear power to bed, and then give Europe a sufficient amount of time to transition to solar, wind, and anything else that was cleaner. With the cutoff of Russian gas and then prices spiking, all of a sudden the Green Revolution, although it was not going to be easy to begin with, but it was certainly worth it, now it's becoming exorbitantly expensive. And when you place people into a position of choosing between surviving and raising their kids in a reasonably safe and comfortable environment and the fate of the planet. Unfortunately, we human beings are structured in a way that we will think of ourselves first and of more abstract issues later. So this is definitely very bad news for the green transition.
All right, Anton Fedyashin, really appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.